I don't have any idea how representative my experience is of graduate school for a couple of reasons. One, I'm kind of late coming to graduate school. As I mentioned, I did one master's degree and then did theater and then did another master's degree and did this and that and did some bioethics for a while. And then finally, when I was almost 30, I said, let's commit to doing a PhD. Also, doing a joint degree is different from doing one degree. So I had to more or less meet the requirements for both departments. I mean, there's a little bit of an affordance, like one, two fewer classes on each end or something like that. But ultimately, it's kind of like a PhD and a half's worth of stuff that I
Yeah.
that I had to do, which was somewhat unusual. And also, I was existing between two departments, which has an effect on your social experiences because I
Hmm.
can't go to all the social events in philosophy because then I'll miss the ones in psychology. And also, I'm pretty introverted, so I already have kind of a small amount of events I'm going to want to go to before I start to feel like I need to retreat. And so I think in some ways my experience was unusual. Another reason why it was, well, I don't know how unusual this is, but as I alluded to, I had this kind of mental collapse at the beginning of the PhD because I had been trying to juggle all these things, and then my grandpa died and a relationship ended. I mean, all this stuff kind of came to a head. And so the first 2 years of the PhD for me were excruciating because I really didn't have much mental capacity and I was really focusing on just trying to get better. So trying to meet the requirements of two departments with like half a brain and being split socially between these different worlds was really quite a trial. So it wasn't until maybe the third and a half and fourth year that I started really feel mentally recovered. I developed a lot of good habits regarding sleep and exercise and things that I had never really paid much mind to my detriment for many years. And had a real sense of community, even though it was spread across these two departments, but having some close friends and so forth. So maybe if I sample from the latter part of my PhD, when I felt a bit more coherent and like I'd figured some things out, I would say that grad school is a lot better when you really do sleep in a religious commitment to getting 8 hours of sleep. And when I was an undergrad, I slept like 3 hours a night or something and did 10 activities and all stuff. And maybe you can do that in your early 20s, but at least my experience is after 30, I just absolutely could not do that. So for me, sleep ended up being central to the ability to do a graduate program. The other thing is social relationships really matter. Having friends that you can count on, having advisors who really have your back, and developing, professional, but to an extent, personal relationships, just in the sense you have to have a real rapport with your advisors and you have to know that they're really looking out for you. This imperious, distant, advisor who, deigns to give you some of their attention every once in a while. Maybe that works for some people, but for me, I've been really lucky to have some advisors who are just really committed to forming a sense of community within their lab and so forth. And so that's made a huge difference to the ability to get through this program. Um, Also, you have to want to pursue something for 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, the first couple of years it depends. In the U.S. Graduate program, the first 2 years or so are maybe primarily coursework. I mean, it depends on obviously what discipline you're in.
Mhm.
And then the last 2 or 3 years is when you're focusing really on doing your dissertation research, whatever that is. Whereas many European PhDs, you sort of show up and just start working on a dissertation, and maybe you take some classes if you want. So, but 4 or 5 years is not uncommon, or 6 years in some cases for doing many PhDs. And so you have to be willing to do something for a while. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I always say to people, so I'm as a little bit of background on me, I'm the first one in my family that graduated from high school. So the fact that I somehow meandered and stumbled my way into a PhD program and then into a PhD is still not comprehensible to me, because
Yeah.
that's not supposed to happen to sort of blue collar. My dad worked in IT, so I guess that's white collar, but neither one of them had any sort of advanced education, because you
Mhm.
could do that back, in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And not so much now. But what I will say to people, sort of from my experience in graduate school, is unless you know that you are okay doing 1% of a project for years, because that's really all you're going to get done every day, and that slow, methodical, always feeling like you're not doing enough, um, that's just sort of the blatant reality after you get done with your coursework. And the coursework is like, how they describe this to me, it's like drinking out of a fire hose, where it's like you're reading 3, 4, 5 books a week, plus all the additional articles, plus anything for the papers you're supposed to be working on. It is very much not like undergrad. in that way. You have to be becoming an expert. You're not being, broadly. So my suggestion to them is, unless you're, and this is a bit different. This is really for academic programs. If you're going to get a professional advanced degree, let's say a master's in business or a master's in education and these kinds of things, which is what I did before I went to matriculate to graduate school. I got a master's degree in secondary education. That's a bit different. Those thresholds are different. So tends to be my suggestion to people is, you have to spend a lot of time. You have to be okay spending a lot of time alone. And you have to spend a lot of time going, I know I'll eventually get over the mountain, but today I'm going to look at a rock. And that's all I'm going to get to do.
Can I ask about your pathway from getting to a family where, you said you're the first to graduate from high school. In my case, I was the first in my immediate family to graduate from college. So I similarly felt a little bit when I was even applying to college, it's like, what am I doing? How does one approach this thing? It wasn't like it was an obvious pathway. So I'm curious in your case, how you got onto your radar, how you found support to even know how to apply to colleges and PhDs and so forth. Like, how did you approach them?
So my parents, to their great credit, understood that it was really important that I have to finish my schooling. I have two older siblings, both of whom dropped out of high school for various reasons, mostly because they were being, a jackass. But neither one went back. Now they all eventually went back and got their GEDs, but it was some time afterward. But they understood there's about a 10-year gap between my older siblings and me, and different dads. They're my half siblings. And there was a very conscious effort from jump with myself and my sister that you're going to go on a different path than we did. And that we did within my mom's case than I did with sort of my first kids. Not that they didn't have the opportunities and could have done these things. They just, they came of age when grunge was cool and decided they hated every establishment and all the rest of it, And they have since, in some ways, had to pay for it for decades afterward. And this is, I'll get to this where my perspective on this sort of is really ground. But they were really put a big emphasis on it. And I was really lucky that I went to a really good public school. And so there wasn't a question of whether or not you were going to college. It was which one you were going to. And but in my case, I had no idea. No one in my family had any idea. It was basic. I ended up going to the local commuter college because I didn't know, I don't even think I applied to anything else. And there, I just happened to get lucky. I took a class, Intro to Political Philosophy, and absolutely was overwhelmed by the material, but then also had a very quick personal resonance with the instructor, who I've gone on to co-author papers with, and so, which is cool now. And it was really getting and developing that relationship with him that sort of set me on what could be. I never really thought I was going to go to graduate school and do all of that. I thought I was going to be a high school teacher. And so I got licensed to do that after I finished my undergraduate. And
that's right. I did the same. I did the teacher preparation program as part of my undergrad as well, and that's what I thought I was going to do, is be a high school teacher. And then right near the end, I was doing some research and maybe I could go to grad school, and if I want to do teaching, I'll finish. I mean, I did the teacher preparation program, but not the student teaching thing right at the end that you had to do to get the certification. So I thought, well, I'll do that after grad school, and then I kind of just kept doing grad school. That's interesting. I didn't know that you also had an interest in teaching.